Welcome everyone to the webinar. We'll be discussing life skills with Gina Pope, who is a master teacher and has two children of her own on the spectrum who are teenagers. She'll be able to discuss that. One thing I do want everyone to know, and we put this caveat in the beginning of each of the webinars, is this is a public forum, and we will be recording this. It will be shared on the Autism Society's webpage. It will be shared on Facebook. It will be shared in different locations. So if you're going to ask a question, which we highly recommend you do, we would love to have this be conversational. Just be aware that any private details you give, this is a public forum. If you would like to ask us a question and you're not used to Zoom webinars, all you have to do is slide your cursor over the bottom of the screen and you'll see icons that will say Q&A or chat. Either one of those, you can type in a question. And again, feel free to do that at any time during this webinar. So Gina, if you would, or Nicholas, if you'd like to go to the next slide. Emily is not here yet, but we will be joined by Emily Levine, the Executive Director of the Autism Society of Southeast Wisconsin, with Gina Herren-Pope, who is the Chief Content Officer of Gemiini and a Master Teacher, and I will be moderating. So Gina, if you'd like to just take it from here.
Sure. Okay, next slide. So today we will just be discussing a little bit about life skills in the areas of self-care and hygiene and chores. For Gemiini users, you'd want to go to the Skills Quick Start Library and choose the Life Skills video section. And you will find many hygiene and self-care and chore videos available. A lot of cooking and cleaning and toilet training. It has it all. So I highly encourage you to check out the Skills Library Life Skills. Okay, next slide, please. In the area of self-care and hygiene, as we talk with parents at Gemiini, a lot of concerns and questions tend to target the following areas: sleeping, toilet training, eating and drinking, toothbrushing, dressing, bathing, grooming. These are just some general areas within the self-care and hygiene area.
Nicholas, Rochelle, hold on. Rochelle has joined. So Nicholas, if you could elevate her to panelist.
Hi,
Okay.
Rochelle.
Go ahead, Gina.
Okay. So when it comes to hygiene skills and self-care, I think one thing is a lot of times we're dealing with an area that is a chain of skills. So in other words, like toilet training, there's a lot, there's pulling down the pants, having the dexterity to do that, the ability to even initiate that they have to go to the potty, maybe the fasteners like snaps and buttons. There's a lot of pieces to some of these areas. Brushing your teeth, sometimes they'll just brush those front four teeth and the rest of them get ignored. So there's a lot of detail within these, within a single task, if you will. So I think it's important to kind of note to self as you go through, letting them try it independently on their own, noting what they can do independently and taking it from there, maybe adding one part or two parts to the chain. So in other words, if your child can maybe just pull down their pants to go to the potty and sit independently, but they really can't pull up, let's work on pulling up, even if it's a matter of for a few weeks, your kids live in sweatpants just to keep things easy. You want them to go ahead and be able to get dressed back, by themselves. Little things like that can not only make you feel like you're moving forward in these areas, but it can help your child feel the success. So I think that's also very, very important. Let's see. Another thing I think is important is as our children do gain these independent skills, let's say they have these independent toileting skills, sometimes it's very hard as a parent and who's used to swooping in and having to help at those parts that they needed it, to actually take a step back. Let them struggle through getting their underwear and their pants up without being all twisted. Let them try to self-correct instead of going in and correcting for them. Very important for their self-esteem and also problem solving. They'll work through it. I feel a bit hypocritical saying that because I'm a swooper. The joke is don't be a vulture, Gina, swooping in there to, you know, to finish the job. Um, so I feel hypocritical saying that, but that has been my mantra since e-learning is that I have tried to take a step back and allow them these independent times to learn these skills. One of the things I always think about is if you've ever just taught a child to tie their shoe, um, and let's say you're in a hurry and you didn't allow enough time to let them do something independently, or you're just watching them struggle and you hate it when your kids struggle, you want to save the day, right? Um, you feel that anxiety just looking at them trying, and I mean, that anticipation, it's like you have to just bite down, let them work through it. If it takes them 15 minutes, it takes them 15 minutes. Better to start earlier, let them go ahead and walk around the house in their shoes for the 30 minutes than to finish it for them. I would say is my first tip is just really allow them, especially when they're just learning a new skill, to do it independently as many times as they can. Practice, practice, practice.
And Gina, I think that's a neurotypical thing for parents too. We make that mistake all the time. I have children
Oh,
on the
absolutely.
spectrum and neurotypical, and
Right.
it's hard to let them go through those errors. It is.
Oh no, I was this way with all four of my children, not just the two with that are on the spectrum. It's just, yeah, no, absolutely, you're absolutely right. This is any parent.
Yeah.
Okay, the next slide. So I want everyone that's listening to think about maybe a goal or something you want to take now that we're home and we're with our children a little more. And not all of us, I understand some of us are still working. I am too. But now that they're home all the time, you're not rushing out the door. Maybe set a goal or two. And it could be something very simple, just the matter of pulling their pants back up on their own and allowing them to twist and, trying to do their underwear first and then their pants or whatnot. And think of a goal, try to make a visual for them. I have some samples here, especially with these chains I mentioned earlier. I have a sample here of going to the bathroom and showering independently that goes through all the body parts to wash. Um, Also, just to note, one of my children, he does read. But when working on independence, and that's the key here for life skills, is you want them to be able to complete these tasks efficiently, independently. So even though my son reads, the visual, I still use a visual schedule like this with a text underneath. The text might say scrub or brush in the back for 2 minutes. It may have a little bit more detail in the type because he does read, but I still use the visuals with him. And he's 14. I think it just really helps clarify exactly what the expectation is. Some people have board maker or PEX. You can actually just go and use clip art. Clip art has a world of PEX right there that you can create your own on a piece of paper. In fact, that the one for the shower, the sample here in the slide, that is not a standard PEX strip. Those are just little clip art clips pasted on a piece of paper, cut and pasted on a piece of paper in that format. You just print out that single page of paper and you can put it up in the bathroom. When it comes to showering, one tip one of my BCBAs gave me a while back was to put a mirror in the shower. I use one of those mirrors that you put in front of a car seat when your kids are infants, so it can't break. It's not glass. It's just that they can still see themselves. I used one of those, and I will tell you, it was a game changer. As soon as JT could see himself washing his hair, washing his face, that kind of, it really made a big difference. That was a great tip that I got. Um, the more visual we can be, the more it helps the child be independent in completing those tasks. Keep in mind though, just printing these out isn't gonna, make him efficient. We have to teach them. We have to model it. A lot of times for modeling, I like to grab my toothbrush, sit next to them and do it with them. They can just follow you. A lot of times you'll notice they'll even start to follow the timing. Especially for the older kids, they'll start doing it at the same rate that you are. It looks kind of like you're watching a mirror image of you doing these tasks. And then again, just a reminder here in this slide to take a step back. Once you've taught it, they have a visual they can go by, allow them the independence and take a step back. Anything to add? Any self-care or hygiene before we move on? Anyone would like to share a story or a tip for parents before we move on to chores?
Hi, this is Rochelle. Can everyone hear me?
Hi, Rochelle. Yes.
Hi, sorry for the delay. I was just going to say I even and this is all ages adults whether you have autism or any special needs, there's a wonderful chart on the proper way to wash your hands,
Hmm.
especially with COVID-19 now. I didn't realize that you weren't supposed to turn off the faucet. You're supposed to use a paper towel. So we even have a little chart that has the 9 steps in our home, and it's as good for adults as it is for teenagers, little ones. Maybe there's a way I'll send that to you guys as well. If you decide we want to add this at the end of it, it's something that we pulled up for COVID.
No, that would be great. In fact, it's funny you mentioned about the paper towel. After we saw that, it was just last week, we actually filmed an alternate version for our pets for in Gemini. We actually filmed using in the kitchen using a paper towel just for that reason. So yes, we'd love that. That's great. Thank you, Rochelle.
Actually, let's reference back to your materials because that visual is even better than the paper. But I'll send it either way. You guys can decide.
Yeah, it's great to have the paper too because you can put it up and the kids can use it, right? You don't always want to have a screen there, but Gemini's definitely, like we've mentioned, is that teaching component. It helps you teach these skills to your children.
Okay, I'll send it out.
And for those who are with Gemini, we do have those videos. What I noticed too, there's a great video on YouTube alone that taught me. It still sticks with me, and it was
The paint.
the paint. It was a man with white gloves, and he put a black blob of paint on his hands, and then acted like he was washing it, and where the black paint would show where he covered. And when he did everything that I would think I would do with my hands, you could still see his fingertips had not been washed, the inside of his fingers had not been washed. And it was remarkable to see all the different motions he took, which I guess are what's trained to doctors when they scrub down.
Right.
But it was incredibly impactful for me to watch that even as an adult. So we have one in Gemini, but if you're not with Gemini, the YouTube with the black paint, I would just say black paint, wash hands. You'll see it. It's stunning.
It is, and I will say I agree with you because you know what I realized my deficit was the interlacing fingers.
Yep.
And
I know
so,
it's you feel like it's something you should know as a grown up is how to wash your hands, and then you go, no, I don't.
yeah, 45 years old, learning how to wash my hands. Yep.
Don't you think, Gina, even for many of our kids to see that video, it's just stunning how visual it is. Yeah.
Another thing too is 20 seconds is a long time, right? I mean, I think the best hand washing I ever had is when I modeled with my kids because we'd sing the ABCs a couple times or, sing the happy birthday song twice. And we would do that. And that's probably, I mean, but if you think about it, 20 seconds is a long time you're supposed to wash your hands. So that's pretty interesting. Oh, I did want to mention, I was looking at my notes too. When it comes to the independence piece, and I know I mentioned the self-esteem, but one thing I noticed when I started having my child do things in private, in other words, giving him that independence to shower in private. And trust me, it doesn't mean that everything was perfect because after a few days, I'd noticed the hair was looking a little greasy and mom might have to go in and assist for a while. But the point being is that when they do have that independence, they learn about privacy. Now, I don't know if any of you parents can relate to this, but for me, my kiddos didn't have that. I guess it's part of the social filter. They didn't realize what they should do in private and what could be around others because, they don't toilet. Well, at least my children didn't toilet at the normal time. They took longer. So mom was in there helping wipe their bum longer than most kids have it. They're showering. So you're around them naked, probably a lot older than your neurotypical children. And so with this comes that confusion. They don't necessarily pick up on the cues that certain things are supposed to be done in private. So I get the calls that, JT had his pants around his ankles and, in the urinal, people can see his butt and you're not supposed to do that at school. And so what happens is if we get independence, we can really work on that privacy piece. And so since today I talked about wanting to work, give little, junior high and secondary school little tips tonight. One of the tips would be that, the more you can have them do independent and in private and really work on those private, that safe distance away from others, those kinds of things, this will help. And we can't be swooping in if we're going to really teach them privacy. And
Okay, I'm sorry. We did have somebody say, are we about to ask questions? I pressed raised hand button not being called on. Is this a discussion of something? So it's going to be, if you do have a question, we can unmute. Nicholas, do you see that?
I do. I can
unmute her.
I can unmute.
Okay, if you'd like to ask a question, go ahead, or otherwise you can type it into the Q&A and we will read it.
They may not have a microphone.
Okay, she's going to type in the question.
Okay.
You want to just go on and we'll just answer it when she types it. It might be longer.
Absolutely. So the next slide, Nicholas.
Yeah, I think we delayed when you were talking about the privacy and you just those different things that you can do for the kids. I don't know if we finished it. I got way late.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a matter of the more independence we can give them in those hygiene areas, and we actually are teaching them that, you know, these are things I do in private. These are things I'm in the bathroom by myself and I'm completing these things. And we can actually talk to them about it, have a social story, and then it'll make sense because other people aren't with them.
Right. So Abigail just, I'm sorry. Well, she just asked what Gemini is. Gemini is Gina and I and Nicholas, we work with Gemini. It is a video modeling company. We have a library of 150,000 videos, and it's covered by CLTS in Wisconsin. So we have many people in the state that use it. And so all of the social stories, all of these different things, we have videos that can teach the concepts. We're trying to just have this, though, be training. We'll make tangential messages, but the point is you could do these things with or without Gemini. Makes it a little easier with Gemini, but we just have our expertise here. We're parents too. We are in lockdown too, and we just reached out and said, how can we help? How can we share our expertise, especially Gina's and some of our other staff with parents? And she said also, Gina, if you could describe the mirror in the bathroom part. Did you just put the child car mirror in the bathroom? How does it not get wet?
It does get wet.
Yeah.
It definitely gets wet. I used suction cups. I sewed them in. Mine was a cloth. So the one that was in front of the infant car seat, it was cloth, and it kind of went around the seat belt that was against so it's like the soft cloth. And I actually sewed in suction cups, and I just suction cupped it at his height down by the tub. It definitely got wet, but again, it's not real glass, and so it didn't seem to pose a problem.
Yeah, and I know that I've heard from parents, we didn't seem to have this problem with ours, but that some of the kids, especially when you'll see that greasy hair, sometimes they mistake the conditioner for shampoo and only condition their hair. So there are many things that when you actually go in and peek in and say, oh, I forgot to teach you how to do that. Some things you might take for granted. So.
And then some people are like me, just use a 2-in-1.
Yeah.
Bottles.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. We're gonna go ahead and move a little bit on to chores. It works. It's the same thing. It's just the idea of, helping. So the way that I was taught it by my parents, there's mine, ours, and theirs. And so we kind of start with mine, the responsibility for them keeping their area clean, putting their toys away, throwing their garbage away, bringing maybe their plate to the sink. So we a lot of times we start out and then we generalize it to include helping or cleaning something that deals with themselves and others. That would be maybe clearing all the dishes from the table or taking the trash out. And then there is, of course, theirs. And this is just an act of helping clean or do a chore for somebody else and these are mine, ours, and theirs is a great concept because each one works a little bit on their inner development, I guess you could say. So when they're really young and they're very id-centered, very, egocentric, everything's about them, it's very easy that they can relate, oh, okay, this is mine, I'll do it. then we start, being part of a family is important, and part of being a family is working together. So when it comes to the R's, it's we all help out, we all pitch in, we are a family. That's a very important concept for a child. It actually helps them feel accepted, and part of the family. And for me, honestly, I can't think of a better way to help engage my kids and feeling part of that family unit. So another thing to think about is what can we do to divide, especially when we're teaching our children a new skill, and it's a skill, to complete a chore, is what can we divide, like washing and drying dishes? Or maybe they just hand you the stack of plates that were cleared from the table. They hand you one plate at a time while you wash it, if they're not quite at the washing stage. Trying to think of a way to involve them. If it's not the complete task, don't overlook the fact that there might be part of a task that they can do. So trying to implement maybe even those parts of tasks.
Gina, I think that was the biggest conceptual breakthrough as a parent of special needs children, is the idea that you can break so many tasks into subtasks.
Yes.
In teaching them, in participating with them. Yeah, it's just conceptually a big,
Mhm.
big breakthrough for me.
Yeah, and even like the R's, being part of it. Daddy takes the garbage out. If the child's real little, that's great. But maybe, he goes out with daddy and he just lifts that lid for daddy. I mean, that's a step. And it still works on that inside component I mentioned, that self-help, that self-esteem, and being part of this family. And he's with dad. And eventually that'll become him taking the trash out, and it'll be a little bit more involved. So I guess the bottom line is kids are kids. Kids are just like us as adults. And whether you're neurotypical or you have a disability, we're none of us are different. We all like to feel useful and helpful. It is part of our, I just think, innate part of us being human. So the more we can let our kids do that, the better for their development, in my opinion. Okay, next slide, Nicholas. Okay, this last slide, there's a lot going on as far as the pictures, and I'll kind of go over them in a moment. But really, when dealing with chores and what chores should my children, be doing, and actually there's a huge debate if we should even give chores to children. Now, so anything that I say is just my personal belief, what my education has led me to. But I do believe in chores, but I also don't believe in not allowing a child to be a child. So, and that's kind of what the argument is about chores, is that they're going to have all this time in their adult life where they're going to have to do these things. So let children be children and not worry about this stuff. Even with my neurotypical kids, I always felt they had to have chores. They always had a chore chart. I always believed in chores. I think it makes for disciplined, productive members of society, if you will. Not to mention, when they go out on their own, I don't have to worry if they'll know how to put a toilet roll paper onto a toilet paper holder. Believe it or not, when I went away to college, I did not know how to remove that thing. I was pulling it, pushing it. I didn't know to squeeze it in, to release it. So I'm speaking from experience. I actually did not know how to do that, because if it went really down, my mom is a bit OCD. She would go in and change all the toilet paper rolls. So I never changed one until I was 19 years old. And I never want my kids to have to go through that. So anyway, so here is a chart, and keep in mind this is developmental, and you're going to you put it in Google, appropriate chores by age or something like that, and Google search it. You're going to see a million of them. This was just one that actually just fit the slide. They're all pretty much the same. And it says 2 to 3 years old, 4 to 5, but this is developmentally, if 2 or 3, my 14-year-old is probably the 6 to 8 right now. So it just gives me kind of an idea of, wow, how much I'm doing and how much I'm not allowing him to do. It just kind of keeps me aware that I could be, doing more. Because for me, chores work on everything. They work on fine motor, gross motor. They work on a whole bunch of different skill sets indirectly. They don't know that they're actually working. Sequencing, cognitive ability, the neurons are firing as they're chaining these little tasks, these movements to complete a chore. So it's great brain building. You think about that too. And you're, should I give my children chores? Yes. Yes, give them chores, let those neurons fire, build that brain capacity. So the next one is to make it visual. I have the little chore chart there for little kids, very visual. You can see it has like a little, trash bag for taking out the trash, or the toothbrush for they're going to brush their teeth. And then the days of the week. Start off very simple, very visual. Again, here's another sample. This is just like I would give to JT about washing dishes. I would give him a written text direction and a picture. So like I mentioned earlier, even if my children can read, I still give them some sort of visual representation. And again, this is just on a page, not a text strip. So we can create these ourselves. So, and then of course, chart it. So chore charts are fantastic for all children. For all children. So chore charts, get one. Oops, excuse me. Sorry, I'm at home, guys. My kids.
We all have that. I just shoot away one of my own. So
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so
Gina, one of the things I love about this, and we could even throw away the years and just stack them in order as kind of a progression of difficulty of chores.
right.
And then you would see, okay, well, if they can clear the table, then maybe the next thing I do is have them empty the dishwasher, or that kind of thing. I think it's a great progression. It's a great progression.
Yeah, and I think another thing to mention too, it says here 2 to 3 years old makes bed. I'm sure they just mean, like straighten the covers up a bit. And that obviously is a skill that's, chained. You can go from as simple as, smoothing your comforter out to, actually putting the sheets on the bed, that fitted sheet. So some of these skills are a long chain that could take many years to develop.
I have a 23-year-old that hasn't mastered that one. So that maybe it's 23, not 2 to 3. Anyway.
Yeah, maybe that's not, maybe there's a dashes mistake in there. I have one too. I get it. I have a 23-year-old myself. Yes. So yeah, and like you mentioned, Brian, just parts of it. But what I love about this is though it keeps things fresh in your head, because I can go through this and go, pull leaves, rake. Like I don't think either of my youngest two have ever done either of those things.
Right.
And it's easy. They definitely have the ability to. So, when the weather gets nice, we're going to go out there and pull weeds around our new rose bushes and stuff. So,
And one of the things we were talking about, Gina, is, we've got more time with our kids at home now. And so we've got more time where we're doing those chores around them. So I think that was one of the great things about this COVID-19 thing is, hey, we're here a lot more than we were. They're watching us do a lot more things, just involve them and teach them to do some of these things.
absolutely. Absolutely. And again, guys, everyone just ignore those years. Just keeping chores at the forefront. Is there any questions about chores, or anyone like to share a story?
Were there any misgivings or difficulties you might have, or a chore you're trying to get your child to do that you're just not quite sure how to do that? Well, if you do and you'd like to type it. We can always go back and answer or discuss those questions. I don't know who sees the raised hands. Nicholas, are you the moderator? Do you see if there are raised hands?
Yep, there are no raised hands currently.
Okay, why don't we move on to the next slide?
The next slide is the end. This is minutes in. Yep.
Okay. So Rochelle, do you have any stories or comments to share?
Well, I like that last slide. I was going to ask, I need to print that out.
Let's go back, Nicholas. Yeah.
That's really, even though we're calling them chores, they're really life skills.
Yeah.
I mean, they're one and the same, but I think it's everybody has varied abilities, of course, but the more that this is a great roadmap for helping our young people become more independent, which translates to a happier life. I would love to share stories, but we're thinking at that right now. So it's a great opportunity for me to kind of say, okay, this is a great checklist for me to try to work on with my 14-year-old because mm, sometimes I love some of your descriptors of yourself, Gina. I can be that same way. Sometimes I just want to do it myself, but I have to stop and think I'm not helping my young person, my child, be an independent adult for the future. So even though it's um, going to take more work at the beginning, it's really the best thing. And like you said, Brian, we have time now, so this is a great opportunity to look at us being home.
Right.
For me personally, I need to do this, so I'm going to totally print this out and try to just work at one of these at a time.
Yeah, and I mean, even if your child is very young, like 4 years old, and you're getting ready to pack their lunch, have him get the lunchbox or rinse the, get the lunchbox out, unzip it, put things in baggies. Um, this not only does it help work on the skill set, it allows them that joint cooperative, um, you know, task together with mom and that time together. So it is so break like I think the big key here, if any takeaway you get, it would be to break apart these tasks. Don't look at it as like, oh, my child could never load the dishes or clear a table. No, they can clear their cup or they can clear their silverware. There is something that they can do to be part of. So I think the more that we break things apart, the more our kids, not only they, at least they surprise me. I think that the more self-efficient they can become, we're like Rochelle, you just said it so beautifully, is the more we're preparing them for the future. So yes, and my 14-year-old is definitely feeling it the last few weeks. um, you want to know how I got my aha experience? It's actually kind of a funny story. A few weeks back, or maybe like closer to a month, um, we were getting ready to go out, and I brought JT his socks and shoes. I kid you not, he's sitting on his bed with his iPad, and he holds his foot up to me like I'm to put on his socks and shoes. So that wasn't telling about him, that was telling about me. So because of his fine motor delay, he has a severe fine motor delay. He tying shoes, and these happened to have laces. If they were his slip-ons, he probably would have just grabbed them from me and put them on. But he literally flung his foot out there, and I said, "Oh, that's what happened." That's where that tying the shoe example comes from. Because every time I watch him struggle, I get this anxiety inside of me. So again, he put his foot in my face, and I went, "Ooh, that was my aha moment." It's like I've created this. So.
Well, I also wanted to thank you for sharing that. I feel you, girl. I feel you.
And
I
Gina,
also like your visuals. Like your visuals are simple words. So no matter what age you are, I think it helps the little to start to associate this picture means I do this. So even if you can't process and read the words, you can start to identify with the pictures.
Yes.
So that's really, I know that's really important and to chart it out. This is just like a perfect example of how to do it right.
Yeah, and what's neat is that I don't know any teacher who doesn't have a board maker and board maker, by PEX. And they, when we're in session and stuff, I've always had my teachers make PEX for me until I bought my own board maker. But they're always willing to help you out with that. But like I mentioned, clip art, just go to clip art. I mean, they have a plethora. Just search as you're making a document, search on Google, cut and paste. I mean, it is copy, image, and paste. It is so easy to do. I shocked myself.
and for those of you who don't know, because some may be less technically proficient on this, if you simply go to Google and you type in search, there are subcategories under where it'll say news, all images, and you click on images and you'll get all images. And then it will say, do you want clip art or cartoon or real art? And there are even tools where you could say, I want it only to be blue. I mean, it's very specific. And then when you find something you like, click on it. And then at least on my computer, different operating systems may be different. I right click and it will ask me if I want to download it. And then you can just download that image, or you can even copy that image and then just paste it onto, you know, any kind of a sheet you have on your computer. So you can create this stuff. It's easy to get it. It's free, especially if you're not gonna, it's just for your own personal use. You can use almost any image you find, and Google's great for that.
Yes, and another thing for Google too is what I always do is I might put um image like when I want it to be more of a PEC style, more of earlier in the slide when it was like the showering or the toilet training. I will put in the search, put in PECs, and PECs is spelled PECS, who've never used PECs, and just put PECs scrub hands, PECs rinse hands, and you'll get a number of different options. And so a lot of times you just pick the visual you want them to see for each step. It's really simple. And Google search is, yeah, it'll get you there. And images, yes, at the very top, just click images.
Yeah, and then you can even get, sometimes it'll be girl. You could say girl washing hands if you want it to be a girl. You can look for skin tone that matches your child, hair color that matches your child. There's lots of great things you can do to really personalize it. And then just as a funny note, I remember hearing one thing when I was a young dad, which has just always proven to be true, which is kids want to help until they can, which is always true. So, Rochelle, that really resonated with me. Like it may
Yeah.
be a little bit more difficult,
Mhm.
you know, to kind of get them to do it, and but it really is worth it to have them fight through it and do it themselves, and kind of leave them. And
Yeah.
like Gina said, just leave them in the bathroom. Let them try to figure it out. They'll figure it out.
Yes,
Or the-
I will share another personal story. It's made me laugh. We were having our therapy appointment as a family, and quite honestly, the therapist talks to my husband and I first, and then he talks to Wade, and he asked us not to be a COVID doom and gloom girl, but we live in Wisconsin, and our family is in other states, all of us. And our therapist, he's very thoughtful, but he said, so do you have a plan? Have you made a plan if you get sick and hubby gets sick at the same time? Wade's 14. Do you have a little bit of a self-sufficiency plan? And
Oh.
quite honestly, we looked at each other and we were like,
No.
no,
Yeah.
I didn't even fathom that we both could potentially be sick at the same time, and have to self quarantine potentially. But if you have a child that is able to, that's something to consider for now. Just simple things. So we're literally starting with helping Wade to be able to make eggs in
Mm.
case we both go down. Can he make, I mean, we're just not there. We never have, we've always helped because that's been easier. But it's really important to try to make them be able to be a little bit more self-sufficient, especially with what's going on in the world right now. And it was an aha for us just last week. We looked at each other like, are you kidding me? We both can't get sick at the same time. That can't happen. That's not even an option. No way. No way. So just to put some additional food for thought there, because we were caught off guard with that. Even though I know we needed to do it,
Right.
it's time.
Yeah. So true.
right. Anybody else have any questions? I imagine if some of you came on, you might have some chores or some life skills that you were thinking of working on with your child. You've got a great expert here right at hand to answer any questions. We'll wait a little bit to see if anybody wants to type. Otherwise, we're at 6:40. Oh, here we go. We got a question. Oh, we had one person just ask, are we able to get continuing education for the credits for the webinar or certificate for participation? Our child has autism, but I'm a licensed foster parent, would like this webinar to count towards continuing education credit hours. I don't know, Abigail. I mean, Rochelle.
We might be able to look at that. Why don't I take that as an action item for us to follow up on?
Okay.
Because I know there's sometimes we can do that. Would Nicholas, are you able to get Abigail's information later on if I get an answer and I can follow up with her direct? And I will take that as an action item.
I am.
Okay. I will look into that. That's actually a great idea. And I have a feeling we might, but I don't want to make a promise yet. Let me look into that.
Yeah,
Right?
that would be great for the rest of our
Yeah.
webinars, Michelle.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Well, and even, I mean, honestly, there's great nuggets every time, no matter what age, no matter. I've gotten something out of all of them, every
Yeah,
last one of them. So I will take that and I will get an answer and share it with the team.
perfect.
And
Any
then
other
you know what?
questions, comments?
I do have a question, and I'm just going to use my world and put it out there. Gina, is there anything in addition as far as integrating these things that you would recommend for maybe a young person that has executive function processing challenges? Like, are there additional steps or tools you recommend? So I see that like the to-do is in very logical order, but sometimes I think what's logical to us might not be logical to an individual that has that challenge.
Yeah, and when it comes to executive functioning, I mean, each child is so different, right? The challenge they face is very different. Um, I would say, along with, like, let's say we had a night routine before we go to bed. We need to make sure our homework's in our backpack, and we have our checklist. And I would have visuals just like this. If put your homework in your backpack, it'd have a picture of the folder. Um, and actually sometimes I use actual real pictures, like, because his specific folder, that kind of thing, I would actually put the picture of his orange folder with JT on it, kind of thing, and I would put it on a picture by the text. And then what JT used to have, when he was younger, probably till about 11 years old, is he had a task ring. Basically, it's like, you ever see teachers, they walk around with a key ring with a whole bunch of pecks on them, so they could flip through them. Well, JT had a task ring, and they were color coded. So his mornings were orange, for example. His afternoons were yellow, and before he left school, he had to check all three colors, which included red. And so whatever we were working on, we would actually have and it was just a PEX. It was just a PEX. And what it did was it actually allowed him the ability to check off and to mentally make note of what he wanted. But that's where his deficit was. He was the child that he would do his homework, but he would leave it at home, kind of thing. And no matter, or he would say it would be in his backpack, but then for some reason it didn't make it to school. It could be he took it off the bus. It could be a million different reasons. But it just, so anyway, we called it a task ring, and that really helped us.
Thank you for that. That's a great suggestion. And color coded. That's really cool.
And it should definitely never look like a teacher's with 100 pecks on it. I think at most he had maybe 5 or 6, if that makes sense. It was very short.
Okay, well, it looks like we have nobody else typing questions. So we'll probably wrap it up right now. Thank you, everybody. And we will have, let me just see. I want to know if we've got another one scheduled for next Thursday. Next Tuesday. I believe we do.
Yeah, you know what? And I will double check that. I don't know if that's gone out yet, so I'll try to get that out tomorrow.
Let me see. We might have to schedule one because I've got this. I'm going to go out and
421, we have young child 5 quick behavior tips and using visual support.
Yep. Okay, so that will be.
Is that resonating? Does that sound right?
Yes, and that's not me. That is someone else, correct?
That's Kate. Yep. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're up for 423 with teens, helping our teens with self-awareness.
Yes, and we're going to be working on, for that one, we will be looking at presentation, which has to do with a lot of this grooming stuff, and self-awareness of their presentation, of their visual, as well as we're going to deal a lot with their emotions. So so we'll be dealing mostly with those two things. And and then their triggers, self-awareness for triggers.
Gemini, thank you as usual, rocking the house, helping us out.
Yes, yes, and our attendance keeps growing. So we got another high attendance tonight. So
Yee.
all right, thank you all and have a wonderful night. And we will see you all next week.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye.
Thank you.